Good afternoon. My name is Tim Ringo, author, board advisor, and conference speaker on subjects related to transforming the workplace. Today's topic of this Tim Talk, this episode, is about solving the productivity puzzle, which is actually a subject of my most recent book of the same title. And what we're going to talk about today is how do we solve the productivity puzzle? Well, first of all, when I sat down to write the book, I ran across this quote, and I loved it. It was probably in the first week I sat down to start writing. And it's by the 12th century poet Rumi, who says basically, everyone has been made for some particular work, and the desire for that work has been put in every heart. And I just love that because I've been really fortunate in my career to be able to travel all around the world for over 30 years now. And basically, whatever culture I've been in, whatever part of the world, this statement holds true. It's really what motivates people. And at the end, if you want to solve the productivity puzzle, it really is about tapping in to people's motivations. And we're going to talk in a little bit more detail about that. But for me, this quote, I think, encapsulates a truism across cultures, across regions, which this is really what we're all about in terms of being human. It's about finding that thing that fires our passion. And then from my perspective, I think it's about organizations recognizing that passion and helping you flourish at work. And that's really what is key to solving the productivity puzzle. But let's get started. Let's dive into a little bit more detail. So the reason for the book, when I first sort of came up with the idea, I was reading a paper about 2016 by the OECD that basically said that the GDP of the world's economy has sort of peaked. It's been on a steady upward trend since the early 1900s, but they're saying right around sort of 2020, we're going to see GDP go down, and it's going to go down for the next 40 years, which I thought was really startling, also very concerning. Because I think, as we know, the way we have higher standards of living today than our parents and grandparents is because GDP goes up generally every year, right? And on average, it's been going up for nearly 120 years now. But essentially what they're saying is that's over, right? The time of boom is over. We're going to see steadily decreasing GDP and steadily decreasing standards of living. And I just felt like that was way overly pessimistic. And essentially, when you think about, and when I kind of outline here the reasons they put forward, I certainly agree with them, but I disagree with the extent to which these are issues. But first of all, let me tell you the three things that they outline. First of all, they say, and I agree, is that organizations have not been investing enough into helping people align to technology, harness technology to make themselves better. We've been in about a 10-year slump now, where we are not very good at spending the money required to align people to technology to allow that technology to make people better. I totally agree with that, and we'll come back to it in a moment. The second thing they said is we're not taking advantage of digital workplaces in terms of being able to transform our processes, right? We're still working on sort of 1990s sort of view of how work works and how processes work, and we're not taking advantage of digital technology to replace redundant processes. Again, I agree with that. And then the third one was they don't believe, and we see lots of evidence of that, is that we don't see organizations evolving their organization structures, flattening their organization structures to take advantage of digital technology. So again, I agree with that. What I don't agree with is that this is going to be the case for the next 40 years. From my perspective and my experience, organizations are all working on these three things, right? It's just taking us a little while to get back to those investment levels. It's taking us a little while to transform our processes, and it's taking a little while longer to flatten our organizations to take advantage of digital technology. And it's uneven around the world. Not everybody is working at the same pace. So I believe this is an eminently solvable problem, and I disagree with the OECD in terms of how long this is going to last. I think we're on the verge of being able to get out of this situation where we're going to see GDP going down on average over time. So there's another aspect, and this is what they're talking about when you're aligning people to technology. It's called the productivity paradox. It's been around since the 1960s. It was really sort of discovered at that point. But when economists looking back from 1960 back to 1900 realized that every time a technology inflection came along, it took about 18 months for people to sort of run and catch up with it, to harness it, to make a better job for themselves, or to be more productive using it. So you see productivity go down briefly for about 18 months, then it comes back up. But what we've seen is 10 years now of the productivity paradox, where we've seen more and more technology coming into the workplace, but yet we've seen people's productivity go down and down and down. So we've been in the longest period of the productivity paradox in recorded history, right? So this is quite concerning, and really it goes back to those three reasons that the OECD outlined, and this is what we really need to focus on, which is invest in people and align them to that technology. But essentially what's happened is it's been racing ahead of us. But the good news is that since the pandemic, we're starting to see more investment now in aligning people to technology and using technology for people to harness to improve their productivity. And guess what? We're starting to see productivity numbers go up for the first time in 10 years. Now, one thing we can't do, and this is what my research showed, is you just can't throw more hours at the problem, right? You can't throw more people at the problem. It just doesn't work. In fact, this is a slide here, or some data here from Deloitte, and McKinsey's and others have seen similar things, which basically says the more you work, the worse you make the problem, right? And in fact, the data shows that the sort of average work week should be around 34 hours a week. That's when you get peak performance from people. When you go over 34 hours, you start to get diminishing returns. So there's an aspect that we need to look at which says, don't do like us baby boomers or baby boomer like me and say, oh, let's just work harder. That doesn't work. It actually makes the problem worse. So we can't do that. We have to work smarter, not harder. So what does that mean? Well, the good news is I think we're starting to figure it out. And I sit in sort of the optimist camp, and the data is starting to support it, that really in the past 2 years, since 2022, something about the pandemic sort of broke a lot of bad habits in the workplace. And we're starting to see people using hybrid working, flexible working, some people reducing the hours they work, and we're seeing people's productivity go up. So I think we're on a bit of a J curve here at the moment. And with artificial intelligence coming into play, I think we're going to see the artificial intelligence is going to be absolutely critical to creating more productive people, more higher performing people. We'll come back to that in a moment. But there's another issue, and this is one that I've spotted for quite a few years and actually wasn't in the OECD's view on it, but I think it is a problem. If you think about it, if you go back to 1992, if you're old enough like me to have been around back then when PCs first appeared on the desk, well, guess what? You had a screen, a mouse, and a keyboard. And then you fast forward to 2023, and it's the same on the desk. You've got a mouse, a keyboard, a screen, a PC. Now, they might be wireless, but I mean, that's really all that's changed in the past 30 years. And this is something that has to change. We have to recognize that today's workplace has got to change and has got to start to use technology like we use at home, right? So at work, it's very much still like 1992. But at home, we use our Google Homes, we use our Amazon Alexas, we use other smart devices to help us buy things, to help us organize our lives. At my house, we have a refrigerator. It's a smart refrigerator connected to the internet, and it has a camera in it, and it actually looks in and lets us know when we're out of certain things. And in fact, we'll order those things for us, so we don't even intervene with it. I mean, imagine having something like that at work that could help you. Well, that time is coming. I think we're going to see these types of technologies starting to appear and work, and it's going to change things quite dramatically. So the other thing I realized when I sat down to write the book, Solving the Productivity Puzzle, is that the definition of productivity is part of the problem. When you go and look at the classical definition, which has been around since the industrial age, since the revolution of the industrial age, it's all about inputs, outputs, and how much is that worth, right? It's people working in factories and farms. When, nowadays, only 20% of people work in factory and farms, and 80% work in offices. It's a whole different kind of thing, and you can't really measure, you can't measure things like innovation and engagement and those things, and leave that out of the equation of productivity. And I think that's what's really important to think about. So we needed a new definition. So I attempted to come up with something that I hope perhaps might move the ball in a different direction. But essentially it's this: it's getting stuff done that measurably improves the economic and human interests of organizations and society at large. So it takes a broader view that says, look, organizations are about creating public good, which creates value. And in order to do that, you need to have workforces that innovate and create new ways of doing things, new products, these sorts of things. That's the 21st century economy today. And we're not measuring productivity on those types of things, right? We're still measuring it in terms of like people being in a factory producing widgets or picking fruit on a farm. So we need this new definition. We need to broaden it. And we need to look at three different aspects of it. I think there's not just the value piece anymore. There's the element of engagement, right? So creating workplaces that people can flourish. They learn, they develop, they build their skills, they get promoted, they earn more money. Creating that place where people are engaged in the work, They're engaged in the purpose of your organization, and they're happy to be there, right? That's key. Because guess what? When people have that, when they're engaged in work, they get this thing called mind space. They've got mind space to sit back and think about new ways of doing things, new ways of creating products and creating new products and services. I mean, if you think about it, Apple, which is the first trillion-dollar company, it doesn't produce anything. It produces innovation. It has an engaged workforce that comes up with things we didn't even know we wanted to buy, like the iPhone back in the day. Now they've got the Apple Vision goggles that are coming out soon, which will be something that we probably didn't know we wanted, but in a few years from now, we'll be thinking, yes, that's what we needed at work all this time. And they create those kind of things, and they do that by having the headspace to innovate. And guess what? When they create that innovation, an iPhone, an Apple Watch, Apple Vision goggles that are coming along, that creates a trillion-dollar company. That is very different from the type of company that was around in the industrial age. So we need this new definition. We need to expand in terms of the aspects of it that are really important. And so just one other thing that I wanted to sort of pass on, this is kind of the core of the book. This is the framework of the book, which says, look, when people ask me, Tim, what is it that companies that are highly engaging, highly productive, highly innovative, what do they do that nobody else does? Well, when I looked at it, it's really, really simple. They are very good at getting the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time with, very importantly, the right motivation, right? They understand the motivation of their workforce. So essentially getting right people, right place, right skills, right time, guess what? That's a high-performing, a very high-value company. And that's really what we're looking for. Who wouldn't want to work in that kind of organization? That's why these organizations can create these kind of engaged workplaces and create innovation and drive value that creates trillion-dollar companies. And so this equation is kind of what I put at the core of the book and say, this is how we solve. If we want to talk about what can we do specifically, we create a mindset of right people, right place, right skills, right place, right motivation, right? We do that. We then put in place processes that support that mindset. And then lastly, we take smart technology to underpin it, to basically superpower it and turbocharge it. And that's the kind of technology that we have today. Artificial intelligence can work really, really well on this type of thing, getting right people, right place, right skills, right time. So this is important. So I call this PEIP, which is essentially the idea of people engagement, innovation, and performance. It's this new kind of definition for what value and what productivity is all about. And then really what we're talking about, for those of you that are HR people, we're talking about an integrated employee life cycle, right? We can bring people in, we can give them their objectives, we can develop them, we can connect and enable them to the organization and other people in the organization. And guess what? We put them in the right place to succeed at the right time. And so this is where HR needs to change, to put in this kind of process, this integrated life cycle for the employee and underpin it with powerful technologies to drive it. And that's what these top companies do when they're creating these types of things. But the real challenge is HR very often gets stuck in kind of doing the back office type of things, when, as you see in this model, they really need to be in the top, focused on workforce productivity, focused on workforce performance. And really it's about balancing these two agendas. And that we need to give investment into the HR departments, into the HR functions, to help them align people to technology, to help get them in the right place at the right time, and recognize that there's kind of two things that they should be working on. Absolutely get the back office working well, but the real value is in HR solving these problems around productivity and performance. So that's it for me today. That's kind of a synopsis of solving the productivity puzzle. I hope you enjoyed it. This is my electronic business card. If you zap that QR code, you can get my details, my Twitter, my LinkedIn, my email. And also, if you're interested in buying Solving the Productivity Puzzle, zap that QR code and you'll be able to get right to my publisher and they can send you a copy. So it's been delightful to be here today. I hope this has been helpful for you, and it's been great for me, and good afternoon. Thank you very much.